Part 54. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Niang. Chapter 531. Chapter 531 Femme Fatale. It was a very beautiful orchid. After the Tianlai Music Festival, Qin Zifeng carefully delivered it to her. It also came with a very detailed cultivation manual written by himself, and told her very solemnly, "This is a strange flower, the treasure among the lotus petals, you must take good care of it." Xiaoling took it in a daze. Looking at her ignorant look, Qin Zifeng was frightened, fearing that she would ruin this precious plant. However, a man's words are hard to follow, and even if he wants to go back on his word, it is too late. He can only cry silently in his heart. After 1,000 warnings and instructions, I finally reluctantly left. Xiaoling placed the orchid in the living room. In the quiet space, the orchid, as delicate as a butterfly, bloomed ethereally. The jade-white and light flowers were filled with a faint fragrance. They looked very delicate indeed. She laid her head on her head and looked at the orchids. Ermao lay beside her, looking at the orchids silently, tentatively stretching out his paws to scratch them. "Don't move." Xiaoling slapped Ermao's paws away and taught him a lesson. "You know it's very expensive, be careful when Qin Zifeng comes back to fight for you." Thinking of Qin Zifeng's physical pain when he left, she felt a little guilty. She really, if you don't know how to grow flowers, will it die within a few days? Ermao stayed still obediently and licked his paws a little aggrievedly. Li Lei opened the door and came in. What he saw was this man's silly appearance and the graceful orchid on the table. Did Qin Zifeng send it? Although he didn't go to the arena match, he paid attention to her movements immediately and knew about Lanhua. Xiaoling hesitated. "It seems very expensive." Li Lei was well informed and could tell at a glance that it was a top-quality flower. He secretly grinned at his teeth at Qin Zifeng. What does it mean to give such an expensive flower to someone else's girl? Li Xiaoli's jealousy was overturned again, and he coaxed Xiaoling softly, "Expensive? It's not that expensive. If you like it, I will buy 10 or 8 pots for you." Xiaoling gave him a look of disdain. Why is this person so rich and wealthy? There is no emphasis on taste at all. Do you understand taste? Besides, I want you to buy it. I have money myself. She never liked using his money on large items, and she didn't want to be a silk flower who could only survive by clinging to him. After a pause, she suddenly remembered what, very angry, "Li Lei, when did you help me pay off my credit card? What's with the text message reminder on my phone?" Li Lei smiled stupidly. The last time she went shopping to buy clothes, she maxed out her credit card, and he secretly helped her pay it back. When she asked her, she pretended to be stupid. "This orchid looks a little dry. Do you want to water it?" Xiaoling glared at him hard, picked up a pillow on the plush carpet, and threw it at him. "You bad guy. You paid back the credit card behind my back. You promised to make me independent." Okay, I'm a bad guy." Li Lei stretched out his hand to catch her, holding her in his arms. He was satisfied, and he was happy to receive a few painless spankings. "Girls, don't be like this. You are rude and you will never get married. I am the only one willing to marry you." "You think I'm rude?" Xiaoling looked aggrieved, looking at him accusingly, and continued to hit him with the pillow. "I'll marry you," Li Lei said with a smile while dodging in embarrassment. She hit him hard several more times to relieve her anger. The feathers in the pillow were scattered on the floor. She was a little tired, sitting in a pile of feathers in a daze, her eyes unconsciously falling on the orchid. Li Lei stood up from the plush carpet and hugged her intimately. He secretly smelled it and said, "Do you like orchids?" "I can't raise it." She was very melancholy. "I'll help you find out how to raise it." "No need, there's a pamphlet over there." Xiaoling stretched out her slender white fingers and pointed at the pamphlet Qin Zifeng had painstakingly attached to it on the carpet not far away. "Help me raise it." Classmate Li Xiaoli, I cried. He had always been impatient with such delicate matters and struggled desperately. Didn't you say you wanted to be independent? Classmate Xia Xiaoling grabbed the pillow and hit him again, feathers flying in the air. Now you think of asking me to be independent? Big bastard. Scumbag. I don't care, you help me raise him. Okay, I'll help you raise. Li Xiaoli, a classmate who was subjected to domestic violence, cried and gave in. Xia Xiaoling stopped with satisfaction. The next day, I threw away the orchids and happily went to the recording studio while humming a little tune. Left student Li Xiaoli, I was speechless and choked in front of the delicate pot of exotic flowers. He looked at the potted flower, looking left and right, but he didn't like it. When he thought that it was given to his sister by another man, he became furious. He dialed his cell phone and called Sutang, buy me a new pot of strange flowers, one that looks exactly like this one. Since the last time he went to Xiaoling to plead for mercy, Sutang got his wish and continued to stay with Li Lei. Li Lei made 3 stipulations to her: not to embarrass Xiaoling, not to embarrass Xiaoling, and not to embarrass Xiaoling. Sutang endured the humiliation and agreed. She has excellent artistic accomplishment and is proficient in all kinds of music, chess, calligraphy, and painting. At this time, she looked at the pot of orchids blooming on the table. Kiwasu is a treasure, young master, there are no 2 that look exactly the same. Li Lei, then just look for something similar to a basin anyway. Xiaoling is stupid and shouldn't be able to tell the difference. He pointed at the pot of flowers in front of him and said, get this pot away from me. Take it away. How to deal with it? Sutang lowered his eyebrows and waited for further instructions from his young master. Li Lei was a little irritable. Whatever, you can keep it, or send it to a museum or botanical garden. Sutang bowed slightly and said yes. She took the potted flower away, knowing its origin very well. She was paying attention to Yezingling's every move, and knew that it was a gift from Qin Zifeng, and it had been widely publicized in the news. She took it back to her room and closed the door. After looking at it for a long time, a meaningful smile suddenly appeared on her lips. She stood up, took out her mobile phone, and took a few photos of the flowers. Then, Sutang put down her cell phone, stretched out her carefully maintained hand, pinched it gently with her fingers painted with light blue lotus manicure, and the faint and light strange flower element fell silently. She picked up the strange flower, crushed it hard, and smashed the flower pot. The flowers and leaves were in ruins, and the house was in a mess. She still smiled, picked up her phone and took a few more photos, saving them carefully. These photos cannot be used now. The young master will easily think of who did it and who wants to blame Yezinling. But, it doesn't matter, just save it for now, you'll be able to use it one day, right? What about the precious orchids? The blame is just that I followed the wrong master. She found a broom and swept the pot of orchids worth millions of dollars into the trash can. End of this chapter. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 532. Chapter 532, Choosing a Tomb. As expected, Xiaoling didn't notice that the orchids had been packaged. Her life was busy but peaceful. She tortured each other with Wei Shaiyin in the recording studio every day. When she got home, she would eat delicious meals cooked by Li Lei himself, surrounded by Mao and Mao dumplings, and the years would be peaceful. Only sometimes, I have nightmares. Dream of a little baby abandoned in a garbage dump, buried under countless garbage, smashed into pulp, and even the cry was too weak to bear a blow. In the middle of the night, she often woke up crying. At this time, Li Lei hugged her, patted her back gently, and comforted her softly. Xiaoling, everything is over. I know you are sad. I will always be with you. Her eyes were filled with tears. It's not over yet. I haven't been able to properly send my child off for the last journey. Unlike her glamorous appearance under the spotlight during the day, she missed her beloved son heartbrokenly and felt as if she was about to collapse. What a cunning fate, her child died when he was only 100 days old. If he could persist for a month, even just 1 month, Lilei would have defeated the emperor and rescued their mother and son. She curled up and read the child's name, crying miserably. Lilei had no choice but to stay with her for a long time. Xiaoling regretted very much. When the child died, she was hospitalized with an abdominal injury. She did not go to the scene of the incident or even see his little body turn into a handful of ashes. He was so young, would he be scared when he was sent into the incinerator alone? Will you cry and want your mother? Thinking about this, her tears fell again. Shall I accompany you to see him? Lilei asked. He didn't know where the child's ashes were placed, and planned to order someone to check with the Pei family. Xiaoling shook her head slightly. He hasn't been buried yet. This child was cremated in a hurry, and then Tianyi attacked the emperor violently. Pei Xian was too busy parrying to pay attention to the funeral of the child named after him. And her wounds never healed, and she didn't have the strength to deal with all these things. It was actually dragged down. In the days after I was discharged from the hospital, I chose a good and auspicious day for him, Xiaoling said. In just half a month, he can be buried in peace. I want to hold a proper funeral for him. Lilei asked softly, has the tomb been selected? Xiaoling said, Pei, he chooses. Although she is not Pei Xian's biological child, he does not allow her to interfere in the choice of the tomb. The Pei family is a wealthy family and has a lot of emphasis on feng shui. Although children who died young cannot be buried in ancestral graves after death, they must also find a grave that will not conflict with the family's fortune. The Pei family has its own tomb selector, who makes all the decisions. Lilei was also from a wealthy family, and since his grandfather believed this, he was more or less exposed to Pei Xian's taboos. Time is running out. He should have chosen a cemetery. Xiaoling, let me ask him for you. Xiaoling didn't want him to intervene at first, but when she thought about it, he was the child's biological father, but would never know the child's life experience. Maybe this intervention was the only thing he could do to help the child, so she agreed. Lilei went to negotiate with Pei Xian, but it didn't go well. Pei Xian looked at him coldly, tell Xiaoling to do it yourself. Lilei was displeased. She is very sad and exhausted. Exhausted mentally and physically, Pei Xian's voice was low. I saw her latest news, recording songs and doing interviews, so where are you exhausted? There was a hint of sarcasm in his voice, which made Lilei feel angry. You don't deserve to love Xiaoling. Xiaoling is such a proud person, how can she write real sadness on her face? She didn't want to be laughed at, and she didn't want to be tricked. Only when she dreamed at midnight, she was tortured inch by the nightmare, and the pain was so painful that she couldn't control herself. Pei Xian heard the implication of his words, and his expression became even colder. Either ask her to ask it herself, or get out. My Pei family's children were buried, and it was not the turn of an outsider to point fingers. He looked at the biological father of the child in front of him, but he was as aloof and cold as if he was the biological father. The man's pride did not allow him to reveal the truth to Lilei. Instead, he said, she was the child born for me. Lilei was stabbed in his fatal spot, clenched his fists, and watched Pei Xian walk away. When she returned home, Xiaoling came up to her and asked, how was it? Looking at the anxiety in the corners of her eyes and brows, Lilei said, he refuses to talk to me. Xiaoling, he wants you to go alone. Xiaoling did not expect such a result, but after thinking about it carefully, it was reasonable. Pei Xian was so domineering and would not allow others to disobey his will in anything. The child's innocent face appeared in front of her eyes. Shi Wei closed her eyes and said softly, okay, I'll go by myself. I'll send you off, Lilei said. The modified off-road vehicle with superb performance drove to the door of Pei Xian's villa and stopped. Coming back here again, Xiaoling felt like she was in another world. Looking at the beautiful red brick wall, ivy, and roses, the scenery was familiar yet unfamiliar. Zhou Ma greeted her at the door of the villa. "Madam, no, Miss Ye, you are here. Sir is waiting for you in the house, please come with me." Lilei was about to follow him in. Zhou's mother stopped him. "Mr. Li, our husband has said that you are not welcome." Lilei frowned and looked at Xiaoling worriedly. Xiaoling was not surprised by Pei Xian's attitude, but she did not give up. She said to Zhou's mother, "Please let him in. I want to listen to him about choosing a grave for the child to bury." Zhou's mother had already guessed that Lilei was the child's biological father, and she felt that he was pitiful because even if her biological child died, he could not participate in the burial discussion. However, the husband is even more pitiful. He has helped raise his wife and children for more than a year in vain, but in the end, everything is gone and the building is empty. She could no longer let the loving couple in front of her go in and stimulate her husband's sensitive nerves. Zhou's mother insisted, "You can only go in alone, Miss Ye." "I'll wait for you outside," Lilei said in a very gentle voice. "If you need anything, call me today." She came to learn about the burial of her child with a painful heart. There was no need to spend time in these small places. Disputes over issues will only add a lot of unhappiness and twists and turns. Although Lilei didn't like waiting outside, he had no choice but to sacrifice. Xiaoling looked at him hesitantly. "Go," he smiled reassuringly at her. Xiaoling then turned around and followed Zhou's mother in with some uncertainty. "Go through the living room on the first floor and go up to the study on the second floor." Pei Xian was in his study. There was a sand table placed on the long thick rosewood table. On the sand table was a map of a cemetery with mountains, rivers, and directions marked on it. He is sitting behind the sand table. When he saw Xiaoling walking in, his voice was low and hoarse. "Xiaoling." She stood upright in front of him, her back slightly tensed, and she looked a little wary. "We meet again." There was an inexplicable meaning in his voice. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 533. Chapter 533, Everyone has their own thoughts. Xiaoling didn't want to meet him. This fateful relationship should have been ended long ago. She wished she could stay as far away from him as possible. However, for Pei Xian, it was the opposite. He cherished every inch of time he spent with her. "You look a little depressed. Did you not sleep well last night?" He stood up and walked towards her slowly, but she backed away warily. So he stopped and looked down at her, as if he wanted to reflect her face into the depths of his eyes. Xiaoling felt uncomfortable looking at him, and even her voice was a little tight. "I came to you to talk about the baby's burial." "Pei Xian, did the feng shui master in your family choose a cemetery for him?" Pei Xian said slowly and gently, "It's just a little baby that only lived for 100 days. It's already dead when it dies. Don't be too sad. Take care of yourself and don't wear down your body." He didn't want to talk directly to her about the matter, because he knew very well that Xiaoling came here today to talk about the baby. Once the matter was resolved, he would leave without hesitation. He wanted to see her more. Xiaoling was anxious. "Have you chosen a good cemetery for him?" Pei Xian then said, "Now Yong'an village is 10 miles away from H City. It has beautiful scenery and a beautifully built cemetery. H City is adjacent to S City, but there is also a lot of distance between them. It takes a day to drive there and back." "Not enough." Xiaoling felt very distressed. "Why did you let him live so far away now?" No way the little baby was all alone. It was so lonely there. Even if she wanted to visit him, she couldn't come and go often. But Pei Ziyan said, the feng shui of the Pei family will not be ruined there now. He is not your child in the first place, how could he ruin your family's feng shui? Xiaoling's chest heaved with anger. You have always disliked him, and even if he died, you would still bully him and bury him so far away. Place. Pei Ziyan's voice was slow, but with a hint of coldness. Why do I like him? Xiaoling, I wish I could peel off his bones and skin him, take apart every cell in his body, and remove your and Li Lei's genes completely separate at this point. He smiled slightly. Don't you love me anymore? Didn't you threaten not to give me a child? Now you're on your own and you can't get pregnant again. I'm glad I don't have to see another one. Little bastard. Xiaoling's body was shaking under his words. She said weakly, I'm not here today to settle old scores with you. Can you bury the child a little closer? No, there was no room for change in Pei Ziyan's words. No matter what the bloodline of this little scoundrel is, he is nominally my Pei Ziyan's child. He must abide by the rules of the Pei family. In fact, this matter has nothing to do with the Pei family. It has nothing to do with the rules. There are several cemeteries in the city that have good feng shui and do not conflict with the Pei family's ancestral tomb. They are also the burial places recommended by the tomb selector. However, Pei Ziyan did not adopt any of them and specially circled a place far away from the city just so that Xiaoling could not visit it often. He couldn't stand her missing her flesh and blood with another man. Xiaoling lowered her eyes and asked softly, I want to get closer to him, can you help me? She would only make such a humble request when it involves matters involving important people. Pei Ziyan's heart hurt a little, but he hardened his heart. No. He is not your child. She finally couldn't help but pick up the scar. The anger in Pei Ziyan's heart surged up. Yes, he is not my child. Do you want me to tell others? Xiaoling bit her lip and stopped talking. She understood that the reason why Pei Ziyan kept the child's life experience secret was not for Li Lei's sake at all, but just out of a man's pride. Even if he told anyone about this, it would be a damage to her self-esteem, which was no different from telling Li Lei. Then he might as well tell Li Lei directly. This is a result that Xiaoling does not want to see. She silently accepted the fact. Only then did a look of satisfaction appear in the depths of his eyes, and his voice softened again. I chose the place with the best feng shui in the cemetery for him, and hired a famous craftsman to carve the tombstone. The funerary objects and fui soil were also chosen. The best thing is that his spirit in heaven can rest in peace. I want to prepare a few more things for him, Xiaoling said softly. Pei Ziyan glanced at her quietly. No, she was a little worried. Pei Ziyan, I am his mother. It's not impossible. Pei Ziyan's eyes seemed to pierce through her, and his voice was gentle and unquestionable. It's just that it doesn't work with the traces of severe thunder. Her eyes dimmed little by little. Originally, she had a small plan in mind, asking Li Lei to put two things as burial objects, so that the child would always remember his biological father. But Pei Ziyan saw through it at a glance. Pei Ziyan, you are too cruel. Her voice was dry. Who is so cruel? He said slowly. Xiaoling, I knew you were coming today. I started preparing since yesterday. I cleaned the villa from top to bottom and trimmed the garden, just to let you see this place. The most beautiful appearance. But even this can't keep you. After more than 10 years of love, you will change your mind. She shook her head, not wanting to get involved with him again. He is too stubborn and will never listen to what others say. In 14 days, it will be the day of burial. We will see you then. She stood up and took her leave. Pei Ziyan bid farewell to each other in silence. She walked out of the living room on the first floor and stood under the porch. She saw Li Lei standing outside the garden gate not far away. The red wall covered with ivy was meandering behind him. The branches and leaves of the newly pruned plants were beautiful and the sunlight was gentle. The shot was taken down, reflecting his reassuring profile. His eyes were always looking at the porch. When he saw her coming out, he stood up slightly. Xiaoling took a few steps forward before meeting him. Unexpectedly, Pei Ziyan suddenly called softly, "Xiaoling." Xiaoling turned around without knowing what was going on. Pei Ziyan stretched out his hand and gently brushed away the non-existent dust on her long hair. His voice was very gentle, "The door here is open to you at any time." She looked a little stiff, took a few steps back, and left. Over there, Li Lei's original leisurely look had changed. Under the porch, the man and woman were as beautiful as a painting, like a couple made in heaven. Although he knew that Pei Ziyan did it on purpose and warned himself not to be angry, there was still a trace of gloom on his face. He took a few steps forward, took Xiaoling's hand, and led her into his car. The car drove all the way back. In the car, Xiaoling was immersed in the grief that her child was about to be buried far away, while Li Lei was immersed in the scene in front of the porch. Both of them had their own thoughts, and neither of them spoke. End of this chapter. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 534. Chapter 534 Tai. Go home. Mao Tuanzi meowed and rubbed against her feet, while Mao still maintained his habitual posture and lay lazily on the balcony, basking in the sun. Xiaoling relaxed and felt exhausted from the confrontation with Pei Ziyan. At this moment, she was shaky and walked towards the bedroom. Xiaoling Li Lei stopped her. "What are you doing?" Xiaoling turned around. "You want to sleep," Li Lei said. "Go and take a shower first. Those who come back from outside are dirty." Xiaoling said weakly, "I can't wash anymore, I'm sleepy." Li Lei's voice was very gentle, "I'll help you wash it." The image of Pei Ziyan reaching out and brushing her long hair just now was like a thorn piercing the bottom of his heart. How could he tolerate his sister falling asleep with the touch of another man? Xiaoling didn't know what he was thinking, but she always loved to be clean and didn't like to sleep without taking a shower, so she nodded and agreed. Now, she and Li Lei slept in the same bed. She had already done all the things she should do and shouldn't do, so it was no big deal to ask him to help her take a bath. A smile appeared in Li Lei's eyes, and he filled the bathtub with water and invited her in. She is wearing a plain spring shirt today with very loose butterfly sleeves, which looks elegant, soft, and ethereal. Li Lei stood behind her and went to unbutton the exquisitely crafted hidden buttons on the back of her dress, which was as beautiful as a picture. "This is not the first time I see her, but she is so beautiful every time." Xiaoling felt that his breathing was getting a little heavier. "Don't make trouble," she scolded him softly and held his hand. "How about I wash it myself?" Li Lei stopped his hand in dismay. "I'll help you." After he finished speaking, there really was no more unnecessary action. Lei carefully restrained himself, helped her into the bathtub, and carefully cleaned and bathed her. Xiaoling was lying on her back in the bathtub. The gentle water flow was like a song. She was surrounded by rich rose petals and delicate shower gel foam. She closed her eyes slightly, feeling the people around her gently washing her long hair and washing her hair. He massaged her gently and heavily with excellent techniques. She was gradually drifting off to sleep. While half asleep and half awake, she felt him pick her up and put her back on the soft and comfortable big bed. A heavy body pressed up. Xiaoling realized what was going on in a daze, and she became more awake. "Li Lei, don't." She was really tired today, with neither physical strength nor mood. "Hand out your hand and push him softly." He gently grabbed her wrist and said, "Be good." "No," she murmured, a little unhappy. She had just talked about the burial of the dead baby, and her mood was gloomy. How could she enjoy it? However, her voice was too soft and sounded like coquettishness. Li Lei still held her wrist. "Li Lei," she was really annoyed. He didn't take her resistance to heart. At this time, she was mostly asleep. "Let me go," her voice changed in tone. The clear sunlight outside the window shone on the spacious feather bed. In the fleeting light, the figure of the man in front of her seemed to overlap with another person in her memory. Memories that haven't flooded for a long time are coming back. When she woke up, Lilei was sitting next to her. She recalled what happened before she fell into coma, but her anger surged up. She glared at him angrily, her voice hoarse. "Lilei, you're crazy." Her body was in pain, and what was even more painful was her heart, as if it was shattered by countless shards of glass. Rotten and crushed, tossing and suffering. She staggered out of bed, entered the bathroom, turned on the shower and rinsed herself frantically. Lilei also calmed down at this time. In fact, since she passed out, his mind returned to his mind and he realized that something was wrong. Why did she react so violently? He followed her towards the bathroom, stood by the bathroom door and looked at her. "Xiaoling, I..." "Get out," she screamed, slamming the bathroom door. End of this chapter. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 535. Chapter 535 Fear. The water from the shower head is still spraying, and a light mist fills the air. Her back leaned against the door, sliding down a little bit, sitting on the cold ground, stretching out her hands to hug herself. "The bruises on my wrists are still there." Xiaoling looked at the faint marks and her body began to tremble slightly again. There was a knock on the door outside. "Xiaoling," Lilei's voice was a little anxious, "what's wrong with you? Open the door." Xiaoling didn't say anything, remembering that in her previous life she had devoted all her heart to falling in love with a man, but she suffered an unreasonable disaster for no reason, being imprisoned, humiliated and violated. Reborn in this life, they thought they would find true love for the rest of their lives, but a sudden paragliding accident almost made them miss it forever. She went through all the trouble to protect his child, but the child died a month before he rescued her from the tiger's mouth. In order to let their child be buried closer, she begged another man but was rejected. When she was full of grief and exhausted, he ignored her resistance and struggle and cruelly opened her most wounds. The mountains of sorrow roared and the tsunami swallowed her up. She didn't know why she had such an unlucky fate and suffered so much. "Are you destined to never be happy?" she sobbed and cried. "Xiaoling, Xiaoling, how are you?" Lilei outside the bathroom door heard her cry and banged the door harder. "Xiaoling, say something. Don't scare me. I was wrong, it was me. No, I shouldn't do that to you. Come out, please, open the door quickly." However, she still just cried. The sorrow of two lives seemed to pour out at this moment. For a moment, she wanted to die like this and be done with it. Her brother said that nirvana would make her a little happier once. Wouldn't it mean that her next life would be happier than this one? But, she couldn't bear it. "I can't bear the man who shoots crazy outside. What if he forgets him after reincarnation? What if, even if she hasn't forgotten him, he no longer loves her reincarnation just like Pei Zion?" She sobbed and cried until she was hoarse. I don't know how long it took, but suddenly, there was a bang on the wall next to the door. She was startled. She raised her eyes and looked over with tears. She saw a big hole opened in the wall at some point. Lilei's strong figure came out of the hole. When he saw her, he knelt down and hugged her into the arms. "Xiaoling, are you okay?" His voice was nervous. She cried louder, out of breath, "Lilei, you bastard! You beast! You bully me! Weave. He carefully protected her body, feeling that she was almost exhausted from crying, feeling distressed and remorseful at the same time. He was her man and he wanted to protect her. Why did he end up hurting her instead? "Xiaoling, I'm sorry," he coaxed softly, I will never do that again. It's my fault, it's my fault. It took her a long time to stop crying and she was a little dehydrated. Lilei carefully carried her back to bed and gave her honey lemon water to drink. I stayed with her for a long time, waiting for her to calm down, but I still didn't dare to ask what was going on with her sudden collapse. It was just a tie on her hand. It was just a very small touch. Why was she so frightened? Before she could figure it out, Xiaoling had already raised her tear-stained face and said, Lilei, let me stay out for a few days. Her voice was hoarse. Lilei's heart skipped a beat. Go out to live. Xiaoling, it was my fault. Don't leave. Isn't it good for us to live together? I will never do this to you again next time. Xiaoling shook her head weakly. I'm scared. Lilei's voice was gentler. I really won't hurt you again. She still shook her head. That's not the problem. She thought slowly for a long time, not knowing what to say. I'm just afraid. Even if I know you did it unintentionally, and know that you will never kidnap me like this again, that kind of fear cannot be controlled. Live, do you understand? As she spoke, her tears fell again and she wiped them hastily with the back of her hand. Lilei's heart felt like there were thousands of knives stirring it up, and the pain was so painful that he couldn't breathe. He said, if you want to move out, I will move out too. Xiaoling, you can live here peacefully. I will come back when you are no longer afraid of me. Who knows, she still shook her head. I want to move out, she said softly but firmly. I'm afraid of you, and I'm also afraid of this bed, this house. She wiped her tears with the back of her hand again. As soon as I close my eyes, it's... What is it? He asked softly. Shackles and mastiffs appeared in front of her eyes, and she managed to suppress the fear that was rising in her heart. Let me go, she said. Lilei, I am not angry with you. I love you, but this incident makes me very afraid of you. I will come back when I am not so afraid in the future. Lilei knew that it was useless to persuade her. He was also afraid that if he pushed too hard, he would lose her. Finally, he nodded and said in a low voice, where are you going? I'll take you there. Xiaoling chose Feng Kun's home. With the wounds from her previous life being reopened, she did not dare to be alone, nor did she want to go to Luoluo to face overly enthusiastic concerns and inquiries. She just wanted to find a peaceful and safe place, and it had to be with Feng Kun. Apart from Pei Xian, only Feng Kun knew about her past and present life, and even everything about her children. She can show a sad expression there, and she can be so sad that she can't eat, and no one will ask why. Lilei doesn't agree with her going to a single man's home, even if that person is Feng Kun, who has a good reputation in the industry. However, her fragile appearance made him feel distressed, and he finally gave in. He knew that Feng Kun and she were close friends and had known each other for many years. Feng Kun was shocked when he saw her with red and swollen eyes from crying. He let them in and asked what happened. Xiaoling shook her head and had no energy to speak. Lilei couldn't explain clearly, so he only said, she is not in a good mood. She said she wanted to stay with you for a few days and then move back when her mood recovers. Feng Kun was somewhat aware that Xiaoling probably remembered something from her previous life. So, he said, no problem, the guest rooms are all ready. I will take good care of Xiaoling, Lilei, don't worry. Lilei was unhappy and wanted to immediately pack up and take Xiaoling away from someone else's house. However, his rationality forced him to restrain himself and thanked Feng Kun. I've caused you trouble, I will always come and see her, please feel free to contact me if anything happens. Feng Kun nodded, don't worry. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xiaowaning. Chapter 536. Chapter 536 Illness. Li Lei said goodbye and left. Feng Kan went to the kitchen and poured a glass of juice for Xiaoling and asked her, what happened? The reason for running away from home this time was too private for her to tell her. She just shook her head and said, don't worry, I'll stay for a while and then leave. My relationship with Li Lei is very good, there's no big problem. Feng Kan stopped asking further questions. Just said, you can stay as long as you want. Xiaoling nodded lightly and said sincerely, thank you, Akin. Perhaps, compared to the elusive Xiaomoyan, the man in front of her was more like her brother, gentle and generous, and he was so gentle and kind when she was sad and sad. When she is injured, provide her with a shelter from the wind and rain, just like her parents did. Feng Kan said, thank you, my place here is just like my own home. By the way, I haven't congratulated you yet. I have gained a lot from the Tianlai Music Festival this time, and my popularity is even better than before my comeback. Xiaoling smiled and said, you are making fun of me, what does this result mean? So Feng Kan also laughed, yes, even if she became an instant hit at the music festival, she would still be a little bit less popular than the legendary queen who had bowed countless people in her previous life. This small achievement is really not worth mentioning. He put her into the guest room, with brand new bedding, and the space was quiet and comfortable. At night, she developed a fever. She got up dizzy and looked for medicine. She vaguely realized that she probably caught a cold while taking a bath during the day, and was treated like that by Li Lei. Her mood was ups and downs, and her body's resistance declined, so she became ill. She felt that she couldn't let Li Lei help with bathing in the future. He would be a big bastard, a scumbag, dishonest and too risky. While grinding his teeth, he almost bumped into someone. Is Feng Kan? Feng Kan supported her, looked at her abnormally red face, and reached out to touch her forehead. Sick? He asked. Xiaoling nodded obediently, I want to take medicine. Feng Kan said, go back to bed and lie down, and I'll find medicine for you. He helped her back, took her temperature, poured warm water and took antipyretic medicine, and watched her take it. If your man comes tomorrow and sees you like this, he will kill me, Feng Kan said. I'll protect you. Xiaoling was feeling dizzy with fever. Feng Kan laughed, wiped the sweat from her forehead with a towel, tucked her into bed, stood up and left the guest room. The disease was so severe that when Li Lei came to visit her the next day, she was still lying on the soft feather bed and moaning. Li Lei scolded her, I told you to live in someone else's house. No, you got sick just after you came out. I got cold in the shower, you rascal. Xiaoling Xiao's little face flushed, and her watery eyes tried to look fierce as she glared at him. Li Lei's heart melted and his voice softened, I was wrong. Humph. Xiaoling turned around and ignored him. Li Lei decided to make up for his mistake and borrowed the kitchen of Feng Kan's house to cook her favorite porridge, make vegetable and fruit juices, and feed her little by little. She ate a meal with his hand and fell asleep again. Li Lei stayed with her for a while, and his cell phone kept ringing. Tianyi has been busy with affairs recently. After Pei Xian regained his strength, he counterattacked fiercely, forcing him to concentrate all his energy on the fight. Seeing that Xiaoling was fine, he asked Feng Kan to take good care of her, and walked away without looking back. In the next few days, I could only spare a little time to come and see her every day. Xiaoling's illness improved very slowly. She felt weak and dizzy in bed every day. Originally, after the music festival, Tianyi wanted to discuss new work content with her, and take into account her current situation to receive announcements and record songs. Wei Shaiyin had been looking forward to it for a long time, looking forward to it, but what she was looking forward to was the news that she was recuperating at Feng Kan's house. Is this okay? Xiaoling is Tianyi's treasure, why is she staying at Feng Kan's house to recuperate? This is outrageous. Wei, who learned the news, rushed into Feng Kun's house as soon as possible. He was very angry when he came. He rushed to Xiaoling's hospital bed and scolded her severely. He has recently been good at scolding people, quoting ancient and modern theories, and scolded Xiaoling so much that she felt that not only was she sorry for Tianyi, but she was also ashamed of the party and the people of the world. Xiaoling huddled in the quilt and shivered. She nodded in agreement and looked at his face carefully. Wei Shaiyin took a breath midway, and when she turned her head and saw Feng Kun at the door, her aura became even more fierce. "What are you doing here?" Those who didn't know better thought this was the Wei family. Feng Kun stood by the door. He didn't know how long he had been here. He probably had never seen anyone swearing like this before. He stared at him dumbfounded. After a few seconds, he remembered to ask, "Are you thirsty?" He handed over the water glass in his hand. Passed. Wei Shaiyin took it, probably because he was tired of scolding, so he drank all the water in one breath. Then he remembered that Feng Kun had not answered the question, so he asked again angrily, "What are you doing here?" "I'm here to deliver medicine to Xiaoling." Feng Kun came over and handed the pills in his hand to Xiaoling. Xiaoling took the 2 white tablets of antipyretic medicine and whispered, "There is no water." Only then did Feng Kun remember, "I'll pour it for you again." Wei Shaiyin was furious. "Is this how you take care of patients?" Feng Kun glanced at the glass in his hand. "The glass of water in your hand was poured for Xiaoling. Seeing that you have been cursing for so long, I am probably thirsty, so I handed it to you." Wei Shaiyin. Xiaoling. Feng Kun turned around and went out, and soon turned back with 2 cups in his hand. One cup is a crystal clear and slender glass cup, which contains warm water for Xiaoling. The other cup is a delicate and white porcelain cup. The coffee inside has a faint bitter aroma. Feng Kun handed the coffee to Wei Shaiyin. "I heard from Xiaoling that you like to drink mand Helling flavor. We have some at home, you can try it." Xiaoling mentioned it to Feng Kun once, but she didn't expect him to still remember it. Perhaps it was the aroma of coffee that impressed Wei Shaiyin. His expression finally softened, and he took the coffee with a slight snort of arrogance. He lowered his head and took a sip. His expression completely softened, barely. Feng Kun smiled and didn't care about him. After drinking coffee, Wei Shaiyin made his request. "Tianyi is very busy, and there is a backlog of things to be dealt with. I want to take Xiaoling away." Feng Kun glanced at Xiaoling. "She's not cured yet." Wei Shaiyin was not happy. "You can recover from your illness just as well if you stay with me." "You?" Feng Kun looked at him doubtfully and thought about the words, "Can you take care of patients?" Xiaoling thought of Wei Shaiyin's way of not touching Yang Chun Shui with her 10 fingers, and her outrageous misophobia, and quickly answered, "He can't, just kidding, living here in Feng Kun, she has 3 meals on time, and has stew for midnight snacks." If she were staying at Wei Shaiyin's place, not to mention what to eat, as soon as he entered the studio and started making music, she would probably starve to death without anyone noticing. Yasinling, Wei Shaiyin glared at her fiercely. Xiaoling shrank into the quilt with a guilty conscience. End of this chapter. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 537. Chapter 537 The Swan Song. Feng Kun looked at them funny. After thinking about it, he said to Wei Shaiyin calmly, "If you want to pick up Xiaoling, that's fine. Remember to take her temperature every morning at 6 o'clock in the morning, at noon, and at 8 o'clock in the evening, and take antipyretic medicine. Take 3 meals a day, take 2.5 tablets 1 hour after each meal, and take it with warm water of about 43 degrees Celsius. In addition, the patient cannot be exposed to the wind or catch a cold. You have to watch her outside for a while she is taking a bath. For a long time, you need to call her to make sure she hasn't fainted in there. The diet should be light and pay attention to the combination. It is best to have vegetable juice and white rice porridge for breakfast. The white rice porridge should be simmered for 3 hours. For lunch, eat something soft and easy to digest. For example, when it comes to freshwater fish, be sure to buy varieties without bones. Eggs and stews are also fine. I will give you a list of things to avoid for dinner and midnight snacks. There are not too many things to avoid, such as beef, mutton, shrimp, and squid. Stop, Wei Shayan's expression turned ugly. Feng Kun's expression was very peaceful. What's wrong? Wei Shayan pointed at Xiaoling on the bed angrily. Why is this little ancestor so difficult to take care of? Ask your boss, Feng Kun said irresponsibly. Xiaoling wanted to protest and wanted to say that she was really not spoiled by Li Lei. She looked at Wei Shayan's expression that was about to explode and shut her mouth obediently. Wei Shayan was very confused, but, if Xiaoling doesn't move back, the recording studio. Feng Kun smiled gently, you can visit her often and I will lend you my workshop. This suggestion surprised Xiaoling. Anyone who makes music attaches great importance to their own independent studio. It is a private space, a breeding ground for creativity and inspiration. Lending there is the same as lending a study room to a writer. It is also incredible for a painter to lend his studio. Wei Shayan was also stunned for a moment, and then said, who wants to use your workshop? Really, that's a pity, I just replaced the NYXR series speakers last month. Wait, it's the one that's limited to the whole world. I heard there's only one set in China, so it's here with you. That's it, I went through a lot of trouble to get it. Then it's settled, you'll lend me your workshop, no regrets. Xiaoling was speechless as she watched the conversation between the two people. How could it be so easy to kidnap Wei? In this way, Feng Kun's home became a temporary recording studio. Wei Shayan visited her every day, spent time here making music, and even grabbed Xiaoling to study together. Thanks to him, Xiaoling finally found something she couldn't finish. As soon as she got busy, she forgot all the pain, severe thunder, and hidden wounds in her previous life, and her body and spirit got better day by day. Feng Kun, who was responsible for taking care of the patients, and Li Lei, who occasionally visited the house, were both very happy. One said, fortunately, we have Wei, otherwise you wouldn't have recovered so quickly. The other said, well, it's time to give Wei a raise salary. On this day, Feng Kun poured a glass of warm water to Xiaoling and sighed again. Xiaoling was pondering over a melody in distress, going over a detail several times before she remembered what Feng Kun had said. Yes, he is just a workaholic. Wei Wei's nickname of pervert is by no means unfounded. Recently, she has been radically revising the song Meet the Opponent that she sang with Bai Murong, and it has been changed beyond recognition. 2 days ago, he proudly gave the music score to Xiaoling, telling her that she could barely sing after changing it, and asked her to give it a try. I have to admit that Wei Shayan is talented. The revised score not only retains the essence of the original, but also has a sublime beauty. But Xiaoling feels that if she gets the original singer by Murong, she will cry, because she will cry. The revised version of the song requires too much attention to detail, and is simply picky, and she will not be able to sing it properly if she is not careful. In the past 2 days, apart from eating and sleeping, Xiaoling spent all her time thinking about this song. At this moment, I am still in a daze. Feng Kun sat down next to her. I've never seen you so worried about any song in The Emperor before. Can it be the same then? She said. Why is it different? Feng Kun asked. At that time she was slightly silent. At that time, I was pampered by Pei Zion, and he was very carefree. When he wanted to sing, he could record 7 or 8 songs in one breath. When he didn't want to sing, no one dared to blame him if he stopped working for a year and a half. But now, she doesn't want to become the canary next to Li Lei, and she doesn't want to rely on him to use too many privileges. She must learn to match the pace of others, such as repeatedly running in with the team instead of letting everyone revolve around her. Maybe it's because I'm not used to singing with others. Xiaoling held the music sheet and sighed, I used to sing alone, but now there's suddenly one more person, and I feel a little unfree. Feng Kun smiled, you are very self-conscious when you sing. Occasionally, you can do impromptu duets on stage, but it is really difficult to record a song seriously. Xiaoling, your personal style is too strong. Not suitable for cooperating with others. Speaking of this, Xiaoling doesn't agree, my style has been much restrained now. Look, didn't I sing very well with Bai Murong and Qin Zifeng at this music festival? Feng Kun clasped his fingers, Xiaoling, don't you think this is the problem? What? She was startled. You and Bai Murong cooperated so smoothly, no, I should say, you and Wei Shaiyin cooperated so smoothly with everyone. Have you ever thought about how, with your unique singing style, is it possible to integrate into another system so quickly? Feng Kun said. That's because my style is different now from before, and my style is no longer so unique and self-contained. Before she could finish her words, she suddenly realized the problem, stopped talking, and broke into a cold sweat. Feng Kun looked at her face and knew that she had noticed. He stood up and stretched out his hand to her, come, I will take you to see something. He took her to the workshop, took out a sandalwood box from the innermost cabinet, and opened the 3-layer box cover. Inside, there was a CD wrapped in layers of white silk. On the plain label paper, there were only 2 handwritten words. Words, Swan Song. Xiaoling was a little curious, wondering what kind of CD made him cherish it so much. He carefully took out the disc and put it into the record player. It is a pure music record, with no vocals. It starts with a charming melody, which is enchanting and arrogant, fierce and arrogant. Gradually, it becomes passionate and magnificent, stunningly changing, and breathtaking. Familiar yet unfamiliar. Xiaoling listened to the melody in shock. She couldn't believe that Feng Kun had actually compiled all the unfinished fragments of their 10-year collaboration into a disc. Most of them are flashes of inspiration during their daily discussions, as well as backup plans for arranging songs. Even the 2 songs they recorded halfway before Pei Ziyan imprisoned her are also listed. He arranged them, but did not complete them. Every note is the most authentic restoration of their thoughts at that time. End of this chapter. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 538. Chapter 538 Ignorance is the happiest thing. She never knew that he had done this for her. After her death, this was a more perfect memorial than anything else. Unconsciously, her eyes filled with tears. Feng Kun handed her a tissue and said, I didn't want to tell you originally because I was afraid you would be sad, but I ended up crying anyway. She choked and said, Akin, thank you. He patted her shoulder gently, like a kind brother. Xiaoling asked, why did you suddenly bring me to listen to this? This disc is called Swan Song. She looked at him puzzled. His eyes were quiet and far-reaching. Xiaoling, if I ask you to sing Xiaoling's song now, can you still sing the original feeling? She was startled, then shook her head. Not to mention that her current vocal range is not as good as before, even her state of mind is very different from that then. Now she is physically and mentally exhausted, scarred, and has experienced 2 lifetimes of vicissitudes, and can no longer sing with the arrogance she once had. He added, if you, Xiaoling, die now, which song do you think can be worthy of the word Swan Song? Her heart was awe-inspiring and she remained silent for a long time. I have listened to all the songs you have sung in the past few years, and every song is Wei Shaiyin's style, not your Xiaoling style. Xiaoling, you and Wei's cooperation is indeed smooth, but that's because you are too compliant. You are suppressing yourself and not expressing yourself. With your experience and skills, you can do well even if you just cater to others. Therefore, even Wei, who is as sharp as you, would not be able to find anything wrong with you. I am too familiar with you to notice it. Am I suppressing myself? She murmured to herself. Even she herself had never noticed this problem. In the past few years, you have almost stopped composing lyrics and music. Except for the recent song Butterflies Can't Fly Across the Sea, there is only the song Stray Cat from more than a year ago. Butterflies Can't Fly Across the Sea was arranged by me, so I won't leave it for now. Speaking of Stray Cat alone, people in the industry can tell that it's Away's arrangement with their eyes closed. His personal style is so strong, can they tell it's your style? Let alone other songs. Xiaoling, when you cooperated with Wei, including those from Dongyu, did you put forward any creative suggestions that were adopted? When you had disagreements with Wei, did you persist? You just passively implemented and cooperated. Even if I have some small inspirations, I still follow other people's framework. Xiaoling, I dare to say that the singles released on the market are all the creative ideas of Wei and others. Indeed, Feng Kun was right, in front of him, she had nothing to hide. Feng Kun looked at her carefully. Xiaoling is a legend and a swan song. And Yexingling, what height do you want to reach? Xiaoling was silent for a moment and then said, I don't dare. Feng Kun raised his eyebrows. Xiaoling lowered her head, I don't dare to completely release myself. It would be too similar to my previous life. I'm afraid that others will say I'm imitating, and I'm also afraid of falling into the reincarnation of my previous life. Feng Kun's voice was gentle and steady. Actually, you can no longer sing the pure feeling of Xiaoling now. And the Xiaoling back then can't sing the way you feel now. Xiaoling, your mood has changed, and your style has changed. It may not change, even if there are similarities with Xiaoling, it may not be completely the same. She knew that some emotions were beyond the control of reason. She was not deliberately suppressing herself, but instinctively, she was afraid. Just like that day when she was in bed with Li Lei, he just tied her up with a tie very gently, but she was so frightened that she still doesn't dare to go back to that apartment. Feng Kun said, I know it's difficult for you, and there is a lot of pain in your heart. But, Xiaoling, you can only resolve these pains by yourself. Breakthrough, singing, love, it is better to sink the boat than to retreat. You know, if you don't break, you can't stand. If you can't pass this hurdle, you won't be the best singer, and you won't be able to be truly happy with Li Lei. He had long been aware of the problem between her and Li Lei, and it was not an option to continue like this. It couldn't happen every time. When something goes wrong, she hides out. Through music, Feng Kun also gave her guidance quietly. Xiaoling said, let me think about it. Feng Kun's words made her think for a long time. Maybe she really shouldn't avoid the style of her previous life too much. She should accept the remaining singing voice in her subconscious and integrate the new characteristics of this life to be a complete self. She is not the real Yexingling. She has the shadow of Xiaoling in her body, and that is a part of her that she cannot deny. Part of life. Akin, thank you, Xiaoling said, I will work singing and love. When Wei Shaiyan came back, Xiaoling quarreled with him in the studio. She wanted to change a few places in his score, but Wei Shaiyan said that she was superfluous and unreasonable. Xiaoling insisted, and Wei Shaiyan almost collapsed and angrily asked her if she had been instigated by Feng Kun. At that time, Feng Kun happened to bring coffee in. The smile on his face was sincere and innocent. I swear, I have not expressed a single word of opinion on the song Chess Encounter. In fact, I have not even read your score. Wei Shaiyan is doubtful. Feng Kun smiled and added, even if you don't believe me, you should believe Xiaoling's professional ethics. He is the emperor's employee, and she and Wei Shaiyan are affiliated with Tianyi. No matter how you look at it, she can't put the music score in production leaked to him. Wei Shaiyin obviously just remembered this and froze for a moment. Of course I believe Xiaoling. She turned her head and looked at the sky arrogantly. Xiaoling sighed. Feng Kun was always precise in his words. Yes, he did not express any opinions on the song Chess Encounter itself, but he did express great opinions on her singing style. In the final analysis, he instigated her. He was the one who was going against Wei Shaiyin. However, Wei Shaiyin was obviously led away by his train of thought and fooled. Why didn't Xiaoling realize that Wei Shaiyin was so innocent before? Feng Kun smiled nonchalantly, put down his coffee, and exited. Xiaoling thought for a while and felt that she should give Wei Shaiyin a warning. Away, be careful what you say in front of Feng Kun. She didn't know how to describe Feng Kun's smoothness and scheming, and she didn't want to discredit him. The old friend of more than 10 years did not want this proud best friend to hurt his self-esteem. As he was thinking about how to speak, Wei Shaiyin had already snorted. That guy, apart from his coffee-making skills, what else is there to like about him? Xiaoling looked at him silently and saw him tasting the coffee in his hand with a look of enjoyment. She thought about it again, changed her mind and swallowed the reminder to him. Away, since you drank from others, let them charge you some interest. Feng Kun was very happy to tease you. As for you, it's better not to know the truth. After all, ignorance is the happiest. Xiaoling and Wei Shaiyin had a heated argument over this song, but fortunately the result was quite gratifying. Although she could not fully express herself, she had already released a lot more than before, and the part of her personal style that was released had been hobbled so hard. These days, it finally integrates well with the original system of the song. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 539. Chapter 539. Are you Xiaoling? Wei Shaiyin took the music score and looked left and right, feeling very satisfied. It's very different from your previous songs, but it may become more popular. Xiaoling smiled. The argument was not in vain. Although Wei Shaiyin is picky and perverted, she is definitely a producer worthy of respect, proud, but not arrogant. With his current fame and status, being able to tolerate others challenging his authority requires a vision and magnanimity that is beyond the reach of most people. He held the music score and left happily, threatening to give Bai Murong a surprise. Xiaoling silently lit a candle for Bai Murong in her heart. This was not a surprise, it was almost shocking and sad. I guess people would cry blind when they saw such a perverted and difficult music score. While she was thinking, she poured herself a glass of warm water. The slender water glass with cracks in the ice is very beautiful, and the clear water waves reflect on her white and slender fingers, like a flawless work of art. She lowered her head and took a sip, but felt that something was missing: no honey, no mint, and no lemon. The taste is bland and makes people melancholy. The room was empty. Feng Kun had gone to the emperor. There were 2 golden lemons on the fruit shelf in the kitchen, but Xiaoling had long since despaired of her cooking skills and would rather drink boiled water than touch them. She missed Lilei. It seems that with the breakthrough in music style, a small frozen place in my heart is also broken. Something is sprouting. A small voice says, Xiaoling, bravely accept yourself in the previous life. Let the person you love see her true appearance. She wanted to tell him who she was. Early before Pei Ziyan let her go, she told Lilei that if she came back, she would tell him those dusty past events. Now that she is back, that promise has not been fulfilled. She took out her phone and entered Lilei's number on the screen with her slender fingers. Halfway through, she suddenly turned off the phone again. Lilei had always been taking care of her, accommodating her, and pampering her so much that now she subconsciously wanted to pick him up even when she returned home. He has been very busy recently, and he is always in a hurry when he comes to see Fengkan every day. She doesn't want to cause him any more trouble. It's better to go back directly and give him a surprise. Xiaoling made a decision, simply packed her luggage, left a note for Fengkan, and went home alone. When she arrived at the apartment, she opened the door gently and walked in. The room was very quiet. On the soft plush carpet, Mao lay lazily sleeping. Next to it was a cluster of orchids, a very elegant and exotic flower. Its jade-white petals were like butterflies spreading their wings to fly. Lilei, Lilei, she called twice and found that he was not at home. There was a sound of something collapsing in the study, and then a kitten came out of the half-opened door, meowing, and rushed to her feet. "Hey, Maduanza," Xiaoling smiled and bent down to pick up the little cat. "Did you get into trouble and knock something over?" As she spoke, she walked towards the study room, intending to pack up the things knocked over by Mao Duanzi. However, when she opened the study door, she was stunned. The wall was covered with photos of her previous life, including concert photos, candid photos, daily selfies, and street photos captured by paparazzi. Every photo next to the photo, there is another photo of her in this life, with the same expression, the same angle, or the same movements as in her previous life. Put together, it seems to be making some kind of comparison. Her heart was beating wildly, and she had a vague premonition of something ominous. I walked to the desk and found a graphic report on the spacious table. It seemed that it had been read over and over many times and had been curled up. Her hands trembled slightly, and when she picked it up, she saw that it was a micro-expression comparison survey book. It was divided into two parts. The first part was a comparison of Yezingling's demeanor 3 years ago and her current one, and the second part was a comparison of Yezingling's demeanor in her previous life. Comparison between the demeanor of the Queen Xiaoling and her current look. Finally, the conclusion is: Yexingling 3 years ago was completely different from the person she is today. As for the Queen Xiaoling, she has a striking resemblance to her today. Her heart started to feel cold, and she felt a sense of fear and embarrassment that her secret would be revealed. It was one thing for her to take the initiative to tell him, but it was another thing for him to investigate her when she was caught off guard. Her eyes scanned the desk. Beside it, there was a stack of handwriting appraisals, a stack of lifestyle habits investigation reports, and vocal habits investigation reports. All the reports had only one conclusion: she is now very similar to the late Queen Xiaoling. One person. Her mind went blank. "Xiaoling," a man's voice came from the study door. Xiaoling turned around and saw Lilei standing there. He seemed to have just come back from outside, and he didn't even take off his coat. He looked at her, then at the thing in her hand, and said with some difficulty, "You are back." He stepped forward. She took 2 steps back. "What are these?" she asked tremblingly. Lilei was silent for a moment and then said, "I know this conjecture is ridiculous, but, you..." He stared at her with his deep eyes and said slowly, "Are you, Xiaoling?" This is the first time I heard him call this name. In such a deep and solemn tone, she pronounced her real name word for word. She didn't know whether she should nod or shake her head. The words she had thought up along the way had long been forgotten. She originally wanted to tell him the truth slowly and tentatively, but stopped when he showed a slightly unacceptable look. But now, the plan is all in chaos. She didn't know what he was thinking. Was he despising her true identity? Fear? Hostile? Treat her as a heretic or something? Now that he has investigated to this point, will he also investigate the inhuman torture she suffered during the year she was imprisoned by Pei Xian? Will he dislike her and look down on her? She moved her lips slightly, but couldn't make any sound. Lilei had already confirmed his suspicion from her expression. It's really you. His tone sounded like pain, but also like a sigh. In fact, he had started investigating her identity long before the paragliding accident. When he almost revealed the truth, the two were separated because of the accident. The period was so chaotic that even the investigation was interrupted. Later, she came back to him, and he was ecstatic. He thought about taking good care of her and living a good life, and he forgot about all the previous investigations. Until she had an abnormal mood in bed that day. He had doubts in his mind again, and he remembered the investigation that he had interrupted, so he restarted it. Because the investigation was almost complete at first, this time, the results were quickly compiled. The more he looked at it, the more shocking it became. If there is really reincarnation in this world, then she must be Xiaoling herself. End of this chapter. Rebirth of the Entertainment Circle, Return of the Queen. Author, Xia Weining. Chapter 540. Chapter 540 Discovered. The sun is shining brightly outside the window. There are evergreen broad-leaved plants planted indoors, which gives a chilly and refreshing feeling. Xiaoling looked pale and looked at the man in front of her with a sense of embarrassment. She just wished that she wasn't dreaming now, or that she was on the set of a certain film crew. It would be great if a director could just shout click, rewind the tape, and start over again. She would never push open this door. It would rather not be known that Lilei has been investigating her. Lilei looked at her and said softly, Xiaoling, you deceived me so hard. She lowered her head to prevent him from seeing her expression. Her hands were tightly clasped where he couldn't see her, and her nails dug into her palms, causing sharp pain. I don't want to lie to you, she used all her strength, but her voice was still very soft. It's just, this thing is too weird, people will think it's a lunatic. This is not the whole reason. The deeper reasons are hidden behind the lips and teeth, because of those indelible injuries. She didn't dare to look at him, her body was shaking a little, and she bit her lower lip with her thin white teeth, exerting force unknowingly, causing blood to flow. The man opposite took a few steps forward and stopped in front of her. A dry and warm hand gently touched her cheek. Her body shivered. His movements paused before continuing. The touch was gentle, like treating the fragile wings of a butterfly with great treasure. He slowly raised her head, rubbed her lips with his thumb, and wiped away a trace of blood on her lips. I'm sorry, he said. She looked at him blankly. He said, it would be nice if I could have known you earlier, if I could have known each other earlier, in the previous life, earlier than Peizian, wouldn't all the harm have happened? How great it would be if he was the one who met her that day in the orphanage. Xiaoling's eyelashes were soft and she blinked slowly like the fluttering wings of a butterfly. Tears gradually gathered in her eyes. She understood what he meant by saying sorry. It turned out that Lilei didn't blame her for hiding her identity for so long. He just loved her so much that he wanted to travel through time to protect her. Her tears fell down her cheeks. He held her in his arms for a long time. Xiaoling, he said, I swear, I will never let something like that happen to you again. Her body is a little stiff, something like that. Is he referring to the murder at the last concert in his previous life, or does he already know what happened to her during the dark year when she was imprisoned by Peizian? She didn't dare to ask, for fear that if he really knew everything, it would make her feel invisible, humble, and dirty. Looking over his shoulder, he unconsciously landed on the thick wooden desk. In the corner of the desk, there is a small light blue card with a few words written on it, Stockholm Syndrome. The following is a thick text. Xiaoling felt ice spread in his heart. He knew everything. She began to struggle, struggling to break away from him, and retreated unsteadily to the corner, not daring to look into his eyes. I'm dirty, her voice was weak, I'm not worthy of you. He looked at her tenderly, we've been together for so long, no matter whether I'm worthy or not. She was confused and didn't understand what he meant, I'm sorry for lying to you and letting you stay with me for so long without knowing it. I will. She wanted to say that she would leave. A person who had been treated like that, what right does a woman who abuses and humiliates and can never have children have to stay with a good man like him? Her heart was sour and sour, but she couldn't say the word leave. She didn't deserve it, but she couldn't let it go. That was Lilay, the only sunshine in her life and the final salvation. Her tears fell again. A paper towel covered her face and wiped it gently. You cry like a little cat. Even Irmao will laugh at you, Lilay said. It's great that you can come back. How can I feed 2 pets by myself? From now on, you can raise Irmao with me. He and Mao Tuanzi should set a good example for them and not be allowed to run away from home, nor should they bear such a sad thing alone. She said wow and cried louder. Her thin arms climbed up to Lilay's shoulders, and she screamed hoarsely. Lilay hugged her again, like hugging a hurt child. If this could make her feel better, he would always give her his shoulder to rely on. He had confirmed her identity a few days ago. He was heartbroken for her and angry for that beast Pei Zion. However, every time he went to Feng Kun's house to see her, he didn't dare to mention it, for fear that once he touched her wound, she would run further away. Lilay had already made plans to bury this matter deep in his heart forever, not wanting her to know anything, and to treat her twice as much to make her happy. However, something went wrong and she still found out. Thai matters will never happen again, he said. Xiaoling, I love you, whether you are Yexing Ling or Xiaoling, I don't care. What he loves is her as a person, not her identity. After that day, he was more gentle to Xiaoling than usual, but she seemed not as lively as before. Sometimes she would be cautious when seeing him, as if she was avoiding something. He knew she was embarrassed, or had an inferiority complex about having her wounds exposed, but it didn't matter, they had enough time to heal slowly. Occasionally, she would sit on the windowsill in a daze, looking very sad. At that time, Lilay knew that she was remembering the past again, as if there was an invisible and transparent layer of glass in the air, far away and out of his reach. Now Lilay has understood why this man, Pei Zion, can easily overturn her emotions. What if the bad fate in the past life and this life has caused so much harm? How can the unforgettable sin of our memory be easily forgotten? If it were him, and he was hurt like this by the woman he loved, he would probably be so shameless that he would never forget her. Often, Lilay would feel panicked. What should he do to compete with others? It can only be tenderness, extreme tenderness, and meticulous care for her. Maybe as time goes by, the long warmth of the years can make the traces of another man fade. He cooked for her, sent her entry and exit notices, and personally drove the car to accompany her on the day when she and Pei Zion's baby were buried. It's a long drive. On the outskirts of another city, a cordon has been put up early around the cemetery. No one will be welcome today. Instead, the emperor's chairman, Pei Zion, and his divorced wife are specially invited to hold a burial ceremony for their little baby. Xiaoling arrived first, dressed in white with a black flower on her chest. Lilay was also wearing a very formal black suit today, supporting her and giving her courage and strength. End of this chapter.